How's it going, guys? John the Basic Expert here. I thought I'd make a video talking about Wight-Box and Zero-E, more Zero-E, and sort of maybe one of a lot of different videos where I can talk about decisions that were made for why Wight-Box is the way that it is. And I thought the first thing we could start with would maybe be the one that makes some people upset, and, you know, whatever, I don't really care, but why is timekeeping so important in Wight-Box? If you looked at either the previous version of Wight-Box, that's a free one, or you look at the new version, you'll see that I'm a little bit more explicit on strict timekeeping than I think even Gary and Dave were in Zero-E. And so I wanted to sort of touch on that and point to as many, I think, important areas of the rules within Zero-E as to why this decision was made. All right, we're going to start in Book 1. In particular, I think it's important to look at the scope here. And in particular, I want to look at, this is, I think, one of the first things that lays the groundworks for this, where it says number of players, at least one referee, and 4 to 50 players can be handled in a single campaign, but the referee to player ratio should be about 1 to 20 thereabouts. So already we see here that the ought claim is 1 to 20 ratio of referee to players, but you can have up to 50 within a game. And I think that already when you see that, you're like, if you have the concept of a conventional game in your mind, you're sort of like, well, how the heck am I going to run like 20 people at the table at one time? And obviously you're not. So therefore, you're going to have different adventuring groups doing different things in different parts of the adventuring world. And you need a way to organize all this without getting into time paradoxes. They're all going to be in the shared campaign. It says any single campaign with up to 20 people. So, you know, you're going to have 4 to 6 to 8 players in an adventuring group over here doing their thing in the part of the map, and maybe another group over here doing theirs, and then over here another group doing theirs, you know, and you have to keep all this in check. So already right there, I think we see like there's going to have to be some record keeping, some timekeeping that's going to be very much important in this regard. All right, let's look on this page here under the magic user section here. So magic users, we see example costs for research of magical items and things like that listed here. So we already have this context of there's going to be a 1 to 20 ratio within Zero-E of players to referee. And then we have these time frames here. So like a potion of healing costs 250 gold plus 1 week. So it takes a week to craft and 250 gold to craft a potion of healing. A wand of cold is 10,000 gold pieces and 6 months to make. And so we see here that we have an amount of gold that's required, and we have an amount of time that's going to be required as well. And so if we stack this on top of the fact that there's 20 players doing this, and, you know, a number of these players might be magic users that want to engage in this sort of activity, you need to have, first of all, strict time to get rid of time anomalies between play groups and when they go into places, when they leave places. This dungeon has been raided by this group, and then this group goes in. Has it already been raided by the time that group gets there? Does that group get there before the other group? Who gets there first? You know, you have to have all these paradoxes solved so that, you know, there's an orderliness to the events that are going on in the game. And so we see here that on top of that, we need to have, if you're keeping track of time of all that, so what happens when a player is trying to craft a wand of cold or any kind of magical wand, anything like that, and it takes 6 months to do it. It takes a year to make an X-ray vision ring, you know? How are you going to adjudicate that? You can't just hand wave it. And I think that you're missing something because it's telling you to do a year. It's telling you to do 2 months. It's telling you to do 4 weeks, so a week for a healing potion. And we also have to keep in mind that this is calling itself a war game, and things like healing potions and these magic items might be useful on the battlefield. You might want to have a supply of healing potions for heroes on the battlefield when they go into battle and mass combat, when they're besieging a castle or anything like that. So you want to be able to restrict that as well. Like, you know, the battle is going to be in 4 weeks in game time, and it takes a week to make a potion and 250 gold pieces. You want to be able to say, well, you know, you're only going to be able to make 4 potions in the amount of time you have before the battle is supposedly going to start. And maybe it starts sooner. It's like, oh, well, you know, what do we do? So we see here that strict timekeeping is going to be required, not just for organizing the players in a 1-to-20 ratio of of player to referee, but also in actions like this of what the player wants to do in 0E in regards to crafting magic items, right? The next section in Book 1 I wanted to look at was the relative section here. The referee may allow players to designate one relative of his character to inherit his possessions if, for any reason, the participant unexpectedly disappears, with or without death being positively established for a period of 1 game month, let us say. At this time, the relative would inherit the estate of the character, paying a 10% tax on all goods and monies. The relative must start at the lowest level of the class he opts for, but he may have the advantage of the inheritance. If the character returns, he takes possession of his estate once more, referee's option as to willingness of the relative to give it up, but must pay an additional 10% tax in order to regain his own. Optionally, the relative may be allowed to stay on as a non-player character in the service of the player character. Loyalty of the relative in such a circumstance would be at a penalty of 0 to -6, and he would possibly intrigue to regain control. Characters without a relative will lose all their possessions should they disappear and not return before whatever period is designated as establishing death. So why do we have this here? Because the players, so we have these time metrics for creating magic items. We have 1-to-20 1-to-20 ratio of players to referee. We have this concept of relatives sort of thrown in here at character creation, and saying if the players are gone for a certain amount of time, you know, they need to be their wealth has to go somewhere. People are just going to start assuming that they're dead. And so I think I want to skip here to, I think, the end of book 3. Book 2. Yeah, this is the tables. We'll go to the time section here. I think we should go to this point now too, and then we'll get to other factors, because this is key here I think explaining everything I've shown so far. As the campaign goes into full swing, it is probable that there will be various groups going every which way. We've already discussed that. You have a 1-to-20 ratio, and all at different time periods. It is suggested that a record of each player be kept, the referee checking off each week as it is spent. Reconcile the passage of time thus. So we have a dungeon expedition equals 1 week. So if you're just going to the dungeon, it's going to eat up a week. You can check that off. And why is that? I think it's to keep, because I've noticed this with my solo gaming. I've noticed this when I've not used this rule. It keeps the players, it makes them want to buy a ticket to get into the dungeon and to make that exploration matter. So they're not just dipping into the first few rooms and getting out, dipping into the first few rooms and getting out. You know, they got to get in, and unless things go really badly, they're sort of incentivized to go a bit further into the dungeon because it's automatically going to eat up a week of time. Now, you may not like that rule, but I think it motivates the players in a certain way, and we have to understand that this is a game, and a war game at heart too, where there's going to be resources, and time is a resource that's going to get eaten up. And I would posit this 1 week thing as like, you got to get a camp set up outside of the dungeon, especially if you have followers and things like that with you. You're going to, and again, it just keeps the players from doing this like tiptoeing, touching in and out of the dungeon entrance as much as possible. Wilderness adventure, 1 move equals 1 day. So, like, let's say they move, let's say over the landscape they can move 3 hexes in a day, so that's a move. So they can move those 3 5-mile hexes in a single day. That's a whole day gone. 1 week of actual time equals 1 week of game time. And this is where we get to this concept, I think, of 1-to-1 time. He goes on to say the time for dungeon adventurers, consider only preparations and typical 1 day descent into the pits. For time for wilderness expeditions, which would include days of rest and recuperation, actual time would not be counted off for players out in the wilderness adventure, but it would for those sequestered in their dens, hidey holes, keeps, castles, etc., as well as those in the throes of some expedition in the underworld. So This rule is one that I actually, from what I understand with it, I don't actually like, and I change it. It seems like it sort of would create some time anomalies as players sort of travel throughout the world. I just think that I hold to this one here. 1 week of actual time equals 1 week of game time. And this is why, for me personally, I link everything up. I use one-to-one time, like the bros say, because I link everything up to the real-world calendar. So really what it comes down to is, and I'll explain how this sort of overlaps with everything and helps keep track of time actually a lot easier. Let's say that you're in one of the play groups. We have a 1-to-20 ratio, and you're in play group A, and your adventuring group is going to travel 3 weeks out to the dungeon. You're going to explore the dungeon for a little bit, or let's say you're going to go 2 weeks out to the dungeon, explore the dungeon, come back to town. So it takes 2 weeks to get from town to the dungeon. You're going to spend a week out there in the wilderness, doing a dungeon expedition. You're going to come back, so that's another 2 weeks. So that's going to be 5 weeks altogether. You're gone for almost a month. Well, what did we just read in the rules over here? That being gone for more than a month, let's say, is enough for people to go, is this person dead? So we need to keep track of time in some regards and players are maybe being incentivized to maybe, hey, we got to cut it short. We got to increase time. We got to increase travel. And it might be that the players might go, that's too far out, or they're going to have to make special arrangements in town, and they need to specify as such with the referee of, I'm going to tell my relatives where I'm going is going to be 5 weeks out, and this adventure should only take me 5 weeks. Therefore, like if your default time is a month, let's say, of being absent from their wealth and from their holdings, then if they're gone for 5 weeks and they said they were going to be gone for 5 weeks and they come back in 5 weeks, it's not a problem. If they come back in 6 weeks, well, now we might have that problem. But you can see that no matter what, we need to have some sort of record and timekeeping here. And I do think that this is key here, and this is just the easiest way to do it, is to track time to the calendar. So let's say in this example, it's going to take 5 weeks to go from the town to the dungeon, explore it, and come back. But we play every week. Let's say we play every Thursday night in that group. And you want to play again next week. Well, that character next week is still a week out traveling towards the dungeon. We've already done that whole adventure the prior week where we played out those 5 weeks, but that character is locked down for 5 weeks in real time. And so if you want to play again next week, you're going to have to play a different character, maybe in a different group over here on some different part of the world, doing something different. You'll have to do something else before 5 weeks are up. In 5 weeks, that character unlocks, and you can do more stuff with that character. I'm hoping that makes sense to you. And you'll have to excuse my voice still. I'm recording this after I'm still... This is only a day after recording the video for last week, so I'm still recovering from being sick. But my voice is a little weak. But I hope you can see what I'm explaining here, how this makes easy sense. And I don't think it's that much bookkeeping. It's not that much timekeeping. You just... At the end of that session from last week where we said it took 5 weeks, we just noted down it took 5 weeks on this date. On this Thursday, we'll come back, We'll be back in town, hopefully. So, I hope that makes sense. And so you'll have a stable of characters that you'll be cycling through that might be all over the world. And I personally think that's cool because it means that the world will get explored a bit more. The players are going to see different parts of the world. You kind of expand the lore a little bit. I think people like that sort of thing. I think players like that sort of thing too. But we can see here, I think that this really hints at what I think is the easiest way to do this. And actually 1E, in my opinion, goes a bit further and kind of explains things the way I just explained it to you as the best suggested way to go about this. All right, let's go back and look at some more examples here in 0E that sort of explain how this would work. I think magical research, again, is one of those areas where we would look at it and say, this requires some sort of strict timekeeping. So both magic users and clerics may attempt to expend one of the spells listed as applicable by class. This is a matter of time and investment. The level of the magic required to operate the spell, determination by the referee, dictates the initial investment. For the first level, 2,000 gold pieces, second level, 4,000, so on and so forth. The time required is 1 week per spell level. So again, you have a level 1 spell, it's going to take you a week. You have a level 2 spell, it's going to take you 2 weeks. So we need to have a way of adjudicating this. And if you are, as a character, are deciding to do this, just as we were talking about how, it took 5 weeks to go out from the dungeon and back, if you have a wizard character, a magic user character, and they're like, I want to research a spell, I want to research this level 2 spell, well, your character is going to be locked down for 2 weeks doing that research. So that character, you can't go out and adventure, you can't do anything. Your time is going to be spent entirely researching that spell for 2 weeks. So if you decide within those 2 weeks that you want to adventure, you're going to have to play as, again, a different character in order to figure out in different adventuring groups throughout it. And I've talked about club play, and I think this is explicitly, when you look at these rules and you see what they're saying, this is explicitly club play. I think that's the only way you can have a 1-to-20 ratio of players doing this kind of activity, is by having a strict time record. And I think that the easiest way to do it is just link everything to the real world calendar, because I think trying to take notes in your notebook, this is going to get very crunchy. This is going to get very bookkeeping like. But it's much easier to just say, you want to research that level 2 spell, it's going to take 2 weeks. You're going to have to play a different character for the next 2 weeks, because if that's what you want to do, you're going to be holed up back in town researching the spell, or holed up back in the tower that you're building researching the spell, right? So you're going to have to play your fighting man character who's doing this stuff over here, for the next 2 weeks, let's say. So to me, I think that it just makes the most sense. It's actually really not, in my opinion, it's not that hard. You're literally just using the calendar to check off the weeks and the time, as Gary noted. All right, let's look at another entry here that I think helps explain time, and I think makes my recommendation for just using one-to-one time or tracking everything onto the real-world calendar for this style of game is key, is when you look at rest here in Book 3. It says, all creatures must rest 6 days after movement. Rest must be at least 1 full day exception. Dragons, so we need to be able to track 6 days of rest and what that means. So, we have to be able to do that. Dragons who travel for 3 weeks must sleep 1 full week if their mode of travel was walking, and they must sleep for 3 full weeks if their mode of travel was flight. So why is this key? Why is this important? Well, because you can actually subdue dragons. So if you have a dragon that's traveling from one place to another, and let's say within this grand game of 1 to 20 ratio of players to referee, one of the characters in your game, one of the players in your game controls a red dragon. There may be somewhat of like a co-DM in some respects, because you've passed off this red dragon character, let's say, to them, and you've told them, design the lair for this dragon. You can make choices. This is the amount of treasure you have at your disposal, and just send your orders to me about what you're going to do. Let's say they have a cult of kobolds that worship them, right? What do you want your kobolds to do? Where do you want them to go and raid? You're always looking for probably new treasure, so on and so forth. And maybe the dragon has to do some traveling. He wants to go and fight some people before to do something. He decides to go do that, or fly out and come back. You want to be able to time that travel time that it takes, because again, we have these travel times here of how many hexes a creature can fly, so a dragon can go 24 hexes. We want to be able to time like what that is, and therefore, do you need to, when you do that time, how much time is it taking in that day to get from point A to point B or back, let's say? How much time was that total? And is that going to require you to rest from your travels? And if it's yes, then that dragon's going to go to sleep. And now if we have other players, especially adventuring parties, moving around on that wilderness map, and they see that dragon flying by, or they stumble upon the lair, or they know of this dragon's lair, they saw that the dragon went someplace and came back, attacked the village, let's say, stole some treasure, came back, and they're like, we're going to kill this dragon, right? And they don't even realize maybe necessarily that this is another player character controlling this dragon. We need to be able to adjudicate when they get back, if the players get to that dragon's lair, how much time is that going to take for the players to do that and traveling to there? And then again, when they get in there, is the dragon going to be asleep? Because, as I said, you can subdue dragons. Right here in the dragon entry, it says subdue. Gives you rules here, right here, for subduing dragons. So we need to have a way of knowing, like, if the players get there, they can get a lot of gold, like from 33,000 to 66,000 gold pieces. That's a lot of XP. That's a lot of, that could be a whole castle. You could subdue a dragon, sell it, and have enough funds to build a castle, become a lord, right? And so we need to be able to figure out if that's possible for that. What is the situation going to be between that red dragon character and the players that might be raiding its lair? Is that dragon asleep in there? Do the players have a chance of subduing it? It's all going to depend on the dragon. The dragon flew X amount of time, or it spent X amount of time in travel, therefore it has to sleep for X amount of time. And if it flew and it's asleep for 3 weeks or whatever, and the players get there in time while it's asleep, well, that's perfect, right? That's a perfect time to attack and assault the dragon's lair. And if it's just a bunch of kobolds in there that are, defending the dragon while he's sleeping, then, that's better than the dragon being awake, right? So, to me, that's like a really key. These aren't everything, but I just think that these are, for me, I think these are enough things that we can point to sort of show the importance of timekeeping in old school D&D. In particular, it's from the very beginning here, and I think it has its roots in this wargaming concepts. So, and again, these aren't every single citation that I could give for why Wight-Box is the way it is and why I've chosen certain design principles over others and interpretations, but I think that the case can be made here. You have the 1-to-20 ratio of player to referee. You have these things that players are going to be doing, so they're not only going to be traveling around the map, entering maybe the similar locations, the same location, and you have to figure out who gets there first, but they're also going to be researching spells. You have creatures that travel and have resting requirements, and those resting requirements hinge on the players being able to get treasure from said creature, right? You have troops moving on the battlefield. You have all of these things going on, and you have to be able to make sure these things all sync up. And to me, the easiest way to do that is, again, just link it to the real world calendar. It takes you a week to travel from here to here. Well, in 1 week of real time, your characters will be there, right? That's just, to me, it's easy. And if you're playing next week, it's like, well, next week we'll be there, right? And I also think this gives downtime a lot of time, because let's say a player wants to build, they do an adventure, they get back into town, and they're actually only during that play time, it was only maybe a few days, or maybe you play every 2 weeks. So they went out, did an adventure for a week and came back to town. They still have a week of time, and the player's a magic user, and he's like, I want to research, we got some treasure back from that dungeon. I want to spend the next week, so we still have a week until we play again, because we play every 2 weeks. I want to spend that week, I'll spend the gold and I'll research to make a healing potion, because that might be useful for when we go back out again, right? So, by the time the players come back in 2 weeks to play, they've already rested, and you can tell the magic user character, a week's been up, your healing potion is ready to go, and now they can go out and adventuring. So I think it makes downtime activities a lot more fun. And again, if you're running on a Discord server or something like that, and you have a 1-to-20 ratio, you can have people in various chat channels sending you information, telling you what they're doing, giving you orders and stuff like that of what they want their characters to do, and you can sort of adjudicate that between actual playing at the virtual table sessions if you're playing on a VTT or something like that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this. Well, alright guys, I hope that this video was interesting, at least. I wanted to make it to sort of explain some choices. I'm going to make a few more videos where I sort of maybe, at least maybe 1 or 2 more where I think there's like key things that I think make Wight-Box and its interpretation unique. We'll go into that in maybe some future videos, at least of a handful, I think, of design choices that will highlight why Wight-Box is different and point directly to, I think, textual evidence within the rules that sort of show this and explain that. So if you find that kind of video interesting, again, like, subscribe, share the video. I thank you for watching. I hope that it got you thinking about how you could run such a game. I know the concept of running like a game with 20 players in it is probably somewhat daunting. It did sound daunting to me at first. I was skeptical of this way of playing, but I've tried it a few times, and I think that it can work. And I've seen other people successfully do it. So yeah, I think it's possible. I want to see club play come back. I want to see clubs come back up. And, you know, one place that I want to maybe start trying to really get this going is on my Guilded, not Guilded server. Guilded is shutting down. I should talk about that too. So Guilded is shutting down by December 19th. It'll be gone. So I'm shutting down my Guilded server. I've already made a Discord server. It'll be linked in the video description below. You can join up there if you're already on Discord. It's already grown super fast as of recording this video. I actually got notifications from Discord that your server is potentially getting raided. It's like, no, it's just, you know, there's a big shift going on here. So yeah, Guilded is going under the way of the dodo. I've made a Discord server for you all to check out, join, and chat games, and maybe run games from there as well, or organize games to be run there as well. And so check that out. I want to see club play come back. And if you want to support the channel as well, you can do so right here on YouTube. You can do it on Patreon. And those are the only two places at the moment right now, because Guilded is going down, so you can't support on Guilded. But if you support on those other two platforms, like right here on YouTube or on Patreon, link those things to your Discord profile and join my server, and it will automatically give you all the privileges to the supporter backend stuff that you deserve. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you found it interesting, informative. It got you thinking about running a grand campaign with more than maybe 6 to 8 players in it. Maybe consider 20. You know, one final thing. I'll say that you can do it with the 6 to 8 people too, if you keep the strict time, and it will force your players to play different character types, play in different parts of the adventuring world, and you're going to start world building together via play. And I think that that's really cool, and I encourage more people to do that. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.